Running Point on ysnlive.com, brought to you as always by Greenwood Chevrolet in Austintown. It's Wednesday, which means it's Wrestling Wednesday with Gary Althiser. We have a full house. We have Gary here, Scotty as always, but we are also joined by someone that Gary knows pretty dang well, Wellsville senior Mason Sims. Mason, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Of course.
So first question, I got to ask about senior year, and obviously you're already having a great one. What has it been like going through it and realizing that, it's the last time you got to represent Wellsville, and every meet you have is going to be your last one? And what's that been like going through the emotions of senior year?
The closer the end of the year comes, it definitely starts to set in. It feels a little surreal. It's bittersweet, but, I guess we're ready for it a little bit. I'm going to miss my teammates, my coaches, everyone that supported me, just being around the wrestling family in general.
Mason, I don't think I've ever asked you this, but what's your favorite thing about wrestling?
Probably just being able to count on yourself on the mat. Like you can't blame anyone else for a mistake. It's all in your control. Like there's no one else out there telling you what to do. Like everything's like it's your show out there.
All right, we have to have a time relevant question because obviously you had a great weekend this week at the OVACs. What was it like to go through that? Obviously, it's a huge, tough bracket. It's a big atmosphere. Go through that weekend and what was working so well for you, and how you were able to have so much success.
Just staying hydrated this weekend was a big one for me. Just the basics, staying mentally sharp, just being confident going out there. I think that's the best thing.
Mason, I tried to explain to these guys how that atmosphere is at the OVAC tournament. I told them about how big it is. You're in a minor league hockey arena. So I kind of throw it out there to what you see as a wrestler. When you're out on the mat, it's a big stage. There's mats everywhere. There are people everywhere, 452 wrestlers, 43 schools, 2 different states represented. What's that atmosphere like for you, especially like your first match? How hyped are you? What are you thinking? What's going through your head?
The first match always gives you butterflies because it can be a little overwhelming walking out there, and even for a first year kid, seeing all those people in the stands, all the wrestlers and everything, the big ceremony, it definitely puts a lot of pressure on. But usually for me, after the first match or so, I'm good and I'm locked in, ready to wrestle for the day.
We've been talking about the success you had and how much success you were able to have this weekend. What was the hardest thing to get through this weekend? What do you think was the toughest form of adversity that you had to face or you had to kind of get through to have that success?
I'd say my loss in the semis, getting caught and getting pinned in the second. That was a tough one. Having to battle back from that, battle back from the semis in general was just tough.
Yeah, that I don't think enough people think about that. The one thing that he did was he really kept his mind sharp after that loss. Losing in the semifinals, you'll see that a lot, especially at big tournaments or at the state tournament, where if you lose in the semis and you got dreams of a championships, a lot of kids, they just mentally shut down. And you'll see somebody in the semis. Once you get to the semis, you're automatically guaranteed a 6th place. You'll see it every year. Kids that get to the semis end up in 6th place. Because their motivation was first, and if they don't have a shot at that they kind of shut down. But Mason did a good job. He didn't shut down. He came right back and fired on all cylinders, stuck every kid he wrestled after that, I think, in the first period or within 2 minutes. In the next every match he wrestled after that. So that's definitely something that all wrestlers think about. You get to the semis, I got one match, I'm in the finals, I have a chance to win a championship. If that doesn't work out for you, you can really get down on yourself easy.
Mason, how much did your teammates and having the support behind you really help you do what Gary just said?
My teammates are always behind me. My coaches too. I even have people come up to me from other teams just supporting me, but my teammates do help a lot. That before the matches, after the matches, they always come up and say, "Good job, good job on the mat," even if I win or lose. So it means a lot.
As we're talking about your community, you were the first week Big Dog Baird Brothers Big Dog of the Valley winner in wrestling, which means your community came through and backed you up, voted you in. What's that mean to you to know that you have the entire Wellsville community and school behind you, and when your name pops up on that list, they all kind of went to it and got the votes in, and were able to get you that win?
It means a lot coming from a small town with a smaller wrestling program. It feels good to have to know that you have support behind you no matter what.
Well, we're heading into the final stretch of the season here. I mean, I know what your goals are, what you want to do, but why don't you just tell everybody else out there what your goals are for the rest of the season and what you want to end your career on?
I'd like to make a state run for my senior year and go out with a bang. I don't want to end up short. Previous years I've ended up 5th place at districts, which is alternate, so you're not guaranteed a spot to go. And I'd like to secure my top 4 spot to go to the state tournament.
All right. So what I want to ask you is, since Gary's right next to you, what has it been like to be coached by Mr. Althiser and to have him as a coach, and talk about what he's meant to you and how much he's helped you in your wrestling career?
It's been very fun. He's made things enjoyable. He's always supported us no matter what. He stuck with us, the team, everyone. He's brought everyone together. He built up the Wellsville high school wrestling program. I feel like he's done a great job as a head coach, and he's just an all-around great person in general, not just a coach. He's a friend, great guy to be around, look up to, everything.
Hang on a second while I grab this Kleenex over here. And thanks, Mason. I appreciate that.
Yep.
I know one thing Scotty always asks us is, how does it feel to be on the mat? What is it like with just you one-on-one? I hope I'm not stealing any of your thunder, Scotty, but I know you ask a lot of those kind of questions about how it feels, how hard it is. Why don't you tell these guys what it's like being in the end of the 3rd period in a battle? What do you got to do physically and mentally?
Mentally, you just got to keep telling yourself that there's no one coming to save you. There's no one coming to help me in this match. I got to stick it out for myself and for my team, for everyone else. And you just got to keep battling, because three period matches are definitely the hardest, especially in high school with too many periods. So it definitely drains you.
I'm going to ditch it to Scotty because I know he's got a great question for you like he does every week. So, Scotty, what do you have for our special guest this week?
Yeah, Mason, I was just wondering, is there anything else you do like extra that's maybe not seen as like a technique when you're on the mat, but just as far as when you deal with some adversity, like if you deal with a loss, like me personally, when I have a bad day or I think I have a bad show, I'll put some of my favorite music on, and it kind of gets me back in a good mind frame. So what do you do to kind of get yourself right again and give yourself that extra boost when you do face adversity?
I'm kind of like you. I love music, and before my matches, I put in my AirPods and I'll blast my music and get ready. And even after a loss, I'll take a couple minutes to think about what I did wrong and play it through my head. What could I do next match the right way? And then I'll listen to some music, clear my head, get my mindset right, and then go back out there on the mat.
Mason, you said it a couple of times already in this interview, how as a wrestler, it's kind of just you out there and there's no one there to physically help you. Like there's no teammates that can come in and wrestle for you. There's no tag teams in this. But when you do have to kind of, like Scotty said, calm yourself, and maybe is there someone that you think about or some advice that you've given that you kind of tell yourself in those moments when obviously you're by yourself physically, but mentally you can bring whoever you want into that match? So who are the people that you kind of think of when you need that inspiration or you need that motivation to keep going?
My coaches, Gary, my coach, Tim Sarge, who isn't coaching this year, they always tell me that the only person that's going to be mad if you lose is you. So just go out there and wrestle and do as best as you can. No one will be mad as long as you try your hardest.
I think that was something that Starkey, he kind of hinted on last week, talking about the mental aspect of that and how easy it is to get down on yourself. So, sometimes you'll see, especially you guys that aren't familiar with the sport, the kids will they'll sometimes beat themselves up after a match thinking that people are upset with them or mad at them. And that's never the case, especially when you go out there and you give 1,000% like Mason does every time. So it's good to hear. We've got a couple kids on here in a row talking about the mental aspect of it. And you're not only battling through like, okay, I'm tired, but I'll be tired after the match, or suck it up. It's not always those things that kind of can bring you down on the mat. It's the mental part of, who am I letting down, or who do I think I'm letting down? So being able to overcome that and realize that nobody's going to be upset at you if you lose. It's just a wrestling match. It's a blip on the map in your life. It's something that once in a while you'll think about when you're in your 30s and 40s and 50s. And when you go on about life, you'll think about the life lessons it teaches you, how it makes you a man, how it taught you how to be self-reliant and work hard. Those are the things that you'll take away from it. And I think that hearing these kids say how these mental things come into their mind that we don't talk about enough, it's good to get it out there so that they could be reinforced that they're doing great things and that the end result is not important.
Mason, you're a senior, so I want to ask you about your future and what some of your goals are for yourself outside of Wellsville when you graduate, and what kind of things you want to see yourself doing in the next couple of years.
After high school, I was thinking about possibly coming back and coaching the high school and even the junior high or even the Tiger Mites, because I have a little brother that wrestles. So I'd like to come back and share my knowledge with the wrestling community and see what I can get back to them and help them out.
All right, Gary, I have to point this question at you because that brings up a great thing that I never get to ask a coach when a player says that. From your coaching perspective, you've coached Mason. What's it mean to you that someone wants to come back and pour into the program after they graduate as a coach?
I don't think there's a greater compliment, if you ask me. I mean, it shows me that the kid enjoyed his time there. He enjoyed the time in the room. He enjoyed the time with you. He got something from it, and now he wants to give back. Maybe he saw something in you or the other coaches that he wants to do, wants to, give of himself to do that. And nobody goes into coaching high school sports for any other reason than they love the sport and they love the kids. If you do it for money, then you've got a problem, because you could make more money flipping burgers, 5 hours a week, as opposed to the time that you put into coaching. So I think it's a great thing. This is the first that I'm hearing this from Mason. You're welcome anytime, buddy. You can come on back. We'll have you for sure. But most of the coaches that I have in the room, the younger ones, have all wrestled for me, and I love having them come back. And every year we have guys that have graduated, have been in that room that come back just to visit, just to say hi. Those are the things that mean the most to me, because I know that we made an impression, and not only just an impression, a positive one.
All right, Mason, I'm going to ask you some fun questions before we let you go. Try to get to know you a little bit off the mats. And first one I like to ask wrestlers, obviously the biggest misconception outside of the wrestling community, if you're not a wrestling fan, they think when they hear wrestling, they think professional wrestling, of course. And then they're, disappointed when you can't pick up a chair and slam it on the kid. But that being said, are you a professional wrestling fan? And if you are, who are some of your favorite wrestlers?
I don't really watch that, but I like UFC and MMA though a lot. Yeah,
well,
those are
in that case. Who are some of your favorite fighters to watch then?
Probably George St. Pierre when he was still fighting. Conor McGregor, obviously. Cosmo. All the big names are my favorite. They give off a big show.
When you were kind of growing up into wrestling, who were some people you looked up to, and some people that you watched film on and said, I got to wrestle like him, or I want to do some of the things that he's able to do?
Growing up, I traveled around and wrestled a lot with a lot of teams. I have an older cousin who wrestles for WVU, so that was always a big inspiration. I wrestled with Logan Hours when I was younger for a couple years. I've wrestled in PA with a coach out there. He wrestled with Kurt Angle. He pushed me a lot. That was a big inspiration, just be the best that I can.
You said you've traveled a lot. Where has been some of your favorite places to travel, whether it be with wrestling or whether it just be a vacation?
Wrestling, I probably had the Virginia Beach was really fun. That was a fun one. Just being able to coming out of the tournament after a day, going to the beach, and the Mason Super Duels in Cincinnati was really fun too.
What is one venue that you haven't wrestled in that you'd love to kind of be able to wrestle in?
Probably the Battle for Michigan Creek. That one always looks pretty cool.
Who have been some of your role models in life that you've had throughout your career?
I'd say my dad, definitely. And just the older guys that always stuck with me and tried to show me like the right things to do, even like not even just in life, just in wrestling and everything like that.
When you think about role models, obviously advice has to kind of come to your head. What do you think is some of the best advice that those guys that you think of have given you throughout your life?
To just be resilient, just keep trying, don't give up, work, give 110%, and you'll get results.
All right, Mason, I want to thank you for your time and all the hard work that you put in. We love covering you on YSN. We thank you again for your time coming on, talking with us on Wrestling Wednesday today. We wish you the best of luck the rest of the year, and we can't wait to talk to you again real soon.
Thank you, guys.
See you, man.
See ya.
Mason Sims from Wellsville. Gary, that must have been a real treat for you to have one of your own players come on, and I'm sure you know him really well, and there were probably not too many things that you heard there that you hadn't already known. But what did you take away from that interview and getting to know your player even maybe a little bit more?
Well, there was a lot that he said that I hadn't heard before. He's not a kid that talks. He's not a big talker. He'll talk to you, have conversation, but every coach has the kids that just all day long. He's not that kid. So it was great to hear that he wants to come back and coach. That's the first thing that I like to hear. His dad actually mentioned it this past weekend for the first time, and that got my wheels turning. Now hearing him say it, I'm really excited to hear that. But again, just like we talked about with Starkey last week, hearing these guys talk about these things that don't get mentioned, about how you can self-doubt or maybe think somebody's going to be upset with you if you lose, if you're going to, your teammates are going to be mad. These are the things that go through your head. And I think mainly it's because it's just you. It's not a team. It's not the team that's being let down. If it's just a kid on the mat, if a duel comes down to one kid, this kid has to win for that team to win. Gosh, I couldn't imagine the amount of disappointment in their own mind if they're thinking, if I do this, everybody's going to be upset at me. I couldn't explain it more, but maybe a kicker in football, if you need to make this kick to win the game and you don't make it, that's probably the kind of feeling that they have. Or a basketball player at the foul line with no time left, you make this, you win the game, or you make this shot, you win. Mm-hmm. And if you don't do it, you're thinking everybody's going to be mad at you or upset with you. These are the kind of things that these kids have to go through, on top of making weight, on top of grinding through a tournament, on top of 6 straight minutes of exerting yourself, all your muscles at the same time, using all of your cardiovascular energy, everything that you have, on top of somebody else trying to physically impose their will on you while you're worried that people are going to be mad if you lose. And that might be the biggest hurdle. All those other things are not nearly as tough to take on mentally as disappointing those that you care about.
All right, you said in that interview, obviously you as a coach would never be mad at a kid for losing, if they give it their all and they're giving 100% effort. But that does get my wheels turning. Like, every coach has some pet peeves out there that maybe it's in practice, or I'm sure you've had some kids come through and, hit that button. Yeah, everyone has a button, especially coaches. What are some of your coaching pet peeves? Maybe some future wrestlers can hear this and know these are things to avoid if they're on Gary's team.
Well, my kids know this well because it's listening. And I don't mean just on the mat, giving information about days and times and answering questions. Sometimes, how can I put this? Kids have a very short attention span. And while coach is talking about these boring details, my brain is off thinking about what I'm going to eat when I leave or what I'm going to do later. And then I get mom calling me or messaging me asking the questions that I just answered 10 minutes earlier while Johnny wasn't paying attention. So if there's a pet peeve with me, it's the little attention to important details and important answers to questions that I have already answered. But that is probably the only thing that really gets me going. I try to be pretty patient with the kids. I remember when I was that age that I did the same kind of things. So I try to be as patient as I can and realize that in the grand scheme of life and our short time on this earth, that thing is not a big deal.
When you were being coached, what were some of your coach's pet peeves? What were some things that you know that if I did this, my coach is going to be upset with me?
I mean, it's just the normal things. Effort.
Right.
I mean, really, what it comes down to, the only thing that every single coach cares about, universally, 100% at every level in every sport that I've ever been around anyway, is just effort. If you give effort, if you try hard, if you give 100%, your coaches will love you. I don't care if you don't win a match, if you don't make a shot, if you don't make a tackle, if you don't make a catch. It doesn't matter. If you're out there busting your butt for your coach, doing everything that your coach asks you to do, then you're going to be a great teammate, and you're going to be somebody that your coach wants to coach. If you want to get better and you try hard, those are the only two things that you need to do to be a good teammate, a good athlete, a good student athlete. And those habits of listening and working hard will take you so many places in life. It's super underrated that's not focused on more. I know winning is what most people focus on, but really effort, attention to detail, and your desire to be there, those are the things that really matter.
I got one more question in that line of thought that just popped in my head, and then we'll get to the recap of the weekend, and we'll talk about our new Baird Brothers Big Dog of the Week nominees. And I also want to get your thoughts on our newest member of the YSN family, Hope, and obviously they bring a couple of new wrestlers that we want to talk about. But before we get to all that, one more question in that line of thinking, because while you were talking, I thought, well, obviously there has to be that line between I'm not mad you lost, but we really wanted this win. I thought you were going to get it, and there's frustration, right? Every competitor gets frustrated. We see it in the NFL. We see it in college. Frustration doesn't mean anger, especially as a younger coach when you were learning. How did you balance, like, okay, I'm frustrated that we lost, but I can't be angry at the kid that we lost, and trying to balance those two emotions?
Really, just because I know that feeling. Personally, I know that feeling. Putting yourself in that kid's, in that kid's shoes, it's easy to not get that way. I mean, you can get frustrated with losses. You're not frustrated with them. Maybe you're frustrated that, something didn't work out. A close call didn't go your way. You're frustrated that, that maybe this kid is capable of more, but he or she doesn't believe in themselves enough. That's a big hurdle. We all coach kids that we see that we know can do great things or do better than they're doing, but they don't think it or believe it themselves. So just trying to encourage them. And I try to do this with my younger wrestlers, the kids that don't have a lot of experience. If they go out and lose a match, but I see improvement, I see them getting better, I see them trying the entire time, not giving up, and going all 3 periods rather than getting pinned or losing by 6, 7, 8 points instead of 12 or whatever it is, or they're a freshman, they go out and they battle with a senior. I try to focus on those kind of things rather than the loss, the incremental improvements that you see every day. And with this sport, that's really the way it is. No one jumps from never wrestling before to being a state qualifier in a year. It doesn't work like that in this sport. And I've used this example before. I can think of golf, how difficult it is to never swing a golf club and then go out there and be an adequate golfer. I'm sure I don't golf, and it's a good thing because I would probably be terrible, but it probably takes just as long to be a decent golfer as it does to be a decent wrestler.
All right, let's recap the weekend. Obviously, Mason wasn't the only one that had a good OVAC in the YSN family. We saw a lot of players, a lot of wrestlers go down and get some success. What were some of your takeaways watching, and who were some wrestlers that we have to shout out for succeeding in the weekend of the OVACs?
Impressions were it was another great weekend. Dr. Dan Doyle, he runs this tournament down in Wheeling, and he has for a very long time, and he's retiring after this year. Everybody would be sad to see him go, but he's leaving it in good hands. It was ran well. There was a lot of great wrestling, 452 wrestlers. They do 32-man brackets. So there had to be some what's called pigtail matches where you have to win. They'll take the kids with the who haven't done as well this season. They'll throw them in matches off to the side away from the 32-man bracket, and they have to win to be able to get into the 32-man bracket. And there were a bunch of weight classes like that just had too many kids in it. So the tournament's getting bigger and bigger. And hopefully I'm taking that as a sign that the sport is continuing to grow. So that was the first thing that I noticed, the amount of wrestlers and the good wrestlers that were there. It was another fun weekend. It was televised. There were some really close matches that happened. We had some finals that went to overtime. And as far as locally go, the local teams, the YSN teams go, I have some results here. We finished 4th in our class, and Mason got 3rd. Southern Local was 2nd, and they had a 7th, a 5th, and an 8th. Beaver Local was 3rd in their class. They had a 7th, 2 6th, a 1st, and 3rd. Edison was 4th. They had 2 7ths and a 6th. East Liverpool was 7th in their class. They had a finalist and a 6th place. And so there was one champion in there, the Buchheit kid from Beaver Local. He won the 120-pound weight class. He's a freshman, and he looked really, really good. I believe he majored his kid in the finals and won 9-0. So he looks like he's got a really bright career ahead for him there. That Beaver Local team is young. I think they've got 6 or 7 kids in that lineup right now that are underclassmen. So they're down, quote, this year from what they normally are, but they have a really bright future and still finished 3rd in their class and had a champion. So I'm sure that Coach McComas is excited with their results. Edison, I got to talk to their coaches there. They had a good tournament. They had 3 kids placing. Southern Local had a semifinalist and 3 placers, a couple of seniors that had done well for them. So I think all the YSN schools were represented well. East Liverpool had a finalist, Eric Williams. His match went to overtime, and he unfortunately gave up a controversial takedown in overtime, but he was right there. So all the local teams for YSN did a good job. It was a fun weekend, but man, it's a long weekend and it's a grind. And I'll tell you, Sunday, I was glad to be able to relax and watch the 49ers win.
I think we teed up Buchheit from Beaver Local because we talked about him last week as someone that could really make a run as a freshman. He was, I think, the 3 seed going in, so we had to beat the 2 and the 1. But what a great job by a freshman going in there and having that success in that atmosphere.
Oh yeah, and there aren't that many 4-time champs there. It's I don't know. There's a handful of them. My high school coach, Mark Emmerling, he's from East Liverpool. He was the first ever 4-time champion back in the late '80s, and he went on to wrestle at WVU. And there's been a handful of them since then, but it's not something that's done very often. So if you are able to win an OVAC championship as a freshman, I'm sure that that's something that the Buchheit kid and his family and his coaches have their eyes set on for in the future. But right now, I'm sure they're getting ready to focus on the postseason that's coming up. And he looks really good. He looks very, very legit. I mean, he can be on that podium in Division II.
Bobby Buchheit, so close to Bobby Buchheit. So close.
Yeah.
So close. Wanted to say it, can't say it. So close. But what a great performance by him. And what I was wondering is, I can't remember her name because it wasn't a YSN wrestler, but from Warren, the girl that was had a really good shot. Do you remember how she did?
Yeah, I watched her. Haley Snyder. She was
Yep.
the 3 seed. She was the first ever female placer in the tournament last year. She got 7th place in the 113-pound weight class. She wrestled in the 106-pound weight class. She got to the semifinals. She lost a tough match to a tough Oak Glen wrestler. And then she battled her way back through the blood round. What the blood round is, if you win this match, you place. They call the blood round at districts, at state tournaments, and at big tournaments where, it's win and you're on the podium. She battled it there. She ended up losing the match to a kid from Weir High. But she's been battling sickness this year is what I understand. So I don't know that she was 100%, but she went out there and she wrestled tough. And if she gets healthy for the postseason, I'm sure she's going to make a run at another girls' state title.
And we also had the Hefner this weekend as well. I think Austintown Fitch had a good showing there, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they finished 2nd overall. South Range finished 8th, Boardman 15th, and Louisville 16th. There were a couple champions, local champs. Eric Smith was first at 144 for Fitch. Tyson Seaschultz is from South Range, another awesome freshman there as a champ at 150. And then Littner was first for Fitch at 165. So those guys all had a really great showing there. And the Fitch with the 2nd place finish, that's really good. South Range being a Division III school, finishing in the top 10. Another good showing for those guys.
And speaking of Seaschultz, shout out to him because he was the first South Range Raider to capture a title at that tournament. So to do that as a freshman, and that program has been good for a long time. So
that
to
tells
become
you
the program's first.
Yeah, that program, we talk about them all the time, how well they do. To have, that's pretty crazy. If that's the first champion they had, and he's a freshman, him and the Buchheit kid, we're going to have a lot of good things to see and talk about here in the next 3 years.
Hunter Newell finished fourth. Caden Welker finished fourth. And then John Tomeno finished eighth, and Colucci finished eighth for the Raiders. Those were the Raiders placers. Thanks to South Range Wrestling for sharing that on social media to give us that kind of info. We love the help from the coaches and the programs that share those information that we can shout out here on Wrestling Wednesdays. Gary, Barrett Brothers Big Dog of the Valley nominees are up for this week, and I think there's a lot of guys that you know, and we talked about them. Bobby Buchheit is on there from Beaver Local after his impressive win in the OVACs. And we go from that to Louisville. Dylan Rhodes gets the call up on the nomination from the Leopards.
Yeah, he's been in that Louisville program. I think he's a junior or a senior. Him and Mason battled in junior high, in the junior high EOWL finals. I think that he beat Mason by 1 point in the EOWL finals, and he's had a great career with Louisville. I know he was a state qualifier last year. I'm not sure if he placed or not, but he's another good kid in that room. And their lightweights have been hammers for my whole coaching career. He's just another one to add to that list.
Just another one. The next one is Arthur. I think it's Arthur Kroom from Austintown Fitch.
Yeah, Arthur Kroom and Adam Heckman, Fitch and Howland, those two kids on the list there. I don't know much about those guys. That Fitch program is, we had the coach on last year. There's only been a handful of the coaches in that program's history. Fitch finishing second at Heppner tells me that they're starting to fire on all cylinders, and they're really coming together as a team. As far as the Heckman, I'm not sure. I don't know a lot about him. I can't see them not being at that tournament. I don't know if there are results there for them or not. But Howland, whatever I think about Howland is a bunch of guys that hit the weights. They do a great job recruiting from their football team, and they have their guys in the weight room. Their guys are always big and strong kids. When you're going to wrestle them, that you're in for a grind.
And then obviously Tyson Seaholtz being the first Raider to win at the Heppner. He gets on the list as well as a freshman. And then a guy that we've talked about a couple of times on Wrestling Wednesday from Jackson Milton, Owen McDevitt. He's a really good wrestler from the Blue Jays program.
Yeah, Coach Brian there in Jackson Milton, that's one of his lightweights. He's got some really tough kids there at the lightweights. Owen was a state qualifier for him last year, 113 pounds. We saw him at that Jackson Milton tournament. I'm sure that he's got his eyes set to get back to Columbus, and Coach Wiedenthal is doing a great job. He's really got that Jackson Milton team up and coming, and I'm sure that Owen is one of the leaders in that room, being a senior now and having experience in Columbus, that he's probably somebody that those younger guys at those lightweights look up to. And I'm sure Coach Brian wants to get him in the room just like I want Mason in the room next year.
Gary, do you cringe when the word lightweight is used as an insult?
I've seen a lot of lightweights that I would not take lightly. So tread lightly when you use that word around the 90s.
No, you're such a lightweight.
Yeah, use that word. Tread lightly around that word when you're around wrestling.
Oh, man. Gary, before we let you go, I also want you, obviously, to talk a little bit about Hoban Wrestling. And we welcomed Hoban into the family last Thursday, so this is our first chance to talk about them. And obviously, they're good in almost every sport they put out athletes in. What do you know about their wrestling program?
Well, I know it's a school full of athletes. We talked a little bit about them before the show started. They're finalists in football. They have one of the third ranked basketball program in the state. They got a good following. It's a hotbed for wrestling up there. It's in Northeast Ohio, which is just produced, good wrestler after good wrestler after good wrestler. I did a quick little bit of research on them. They have the number 11 ranked 157 pounder, and they have a heavyweight that is ranked as well. And if they went that far into the football tournament, they probably got guys that are just now starting to hit their stride. They probably got a late start at the season. They're a big school. They've got to be one of the biggest Division II schools. I'm really surprised they're not a Division I school. They've got a great following. I think this is a great ad for YSN, because there's no doubt that there are going to be some good individuals on that team as time goes on, and they'll bring some more attention to YSN in the sport.
We are so excited. I mean, we keep saying it, but we are so excited that Hoban is part of the YSN family. DJ went down there with Richie yesterday to call their boys' game against Walsh, which was a big win for Hoban against Walsh Jesuit, and it was a sold-out crowd. I'll be down there tomorrow for their girls' game against Akron Ellet. It'll be senior night, so we're hitting the ground running with Hoban, and we can't wait to continue their coverage throughout the rest of the sports seasons. Scotty, do you have any questions for Gary before we let him go?
I do. This is kind of taking it back a little bit to the interview when Anthony was asking, during the time when you were coming up and you were coached as a wrestler. And I just wanted to know from you, Gary, was there a moment where you faced adversity and then you kind of realized like something clicked and you're like, I could do this? I was just wondering if there was one specific moment where you're like, you know what, this isn't easy, but I kind of got this here. Like I'm pretty good.
Yeah, so my senior year, I cut 31 or 32 pounds. And at the time, I was 16. I was young for my grade. 16, turned 17 years old as a senior. I'd never done anything like that before. And at first, I didn't think it was possible, but I wanted to get the weight off and I had it to lose. So it was just more of a mind. It was really more of a mind game than anything for me. So it just started to come off. I worked really hard in practice every day. I would wear, sweatshirts and just try to work as hard as I could. And I would go run after practice too. After I would get home, I would take a shower, change, and then I would go run. And getting that weight off, it was a big deal to me. And I remember even classmates of mine and people that I went to school with used to just kind of throw little jabs like, you're not going to lose all that weight. It's not going to come off. So it was even more motivation for me. And I remember the day that I made weight, that I dropped the weight, I walked into the locker room. I wanted to get something to drink out of the pop machine that was in there. I wanted to get a juice out of there. And when I walked in, one of the football players was in there lifting weights, and he kind of laughed and said, "Did you make weight yet?" And I turned around, looked at him, and I said, "Yes, I did. Today, I'm right on." And he shut up and he never said a word to me about it again. So that was a big milestone for me, that I was able to do that I was able to mentally push through that and get that weight off. And as a kid, especially a kid that had the weight to lose, it was something I wanted to lose the weight anyway. It gave me so much motivation in life and just more confidence in myself that I could do something like that. And I'll tell you, for the next decade of my life, I used to turn and look back on that senior year about how tough that senior year was for me, how many mental hurdles I had to overcome to make that weight, to just making the weight, not even stepping on the mat, but making the weight, getting out there, battling every day in practice, cutting that weight down. And it seems like a small accomplishment now, but at the time when you're a kid and 30 something pounds as a kid might as well have said it was 150 pounds to me then when I first started. So it's something that I always look back on, and it helped me later on in life as an adult to lose a lot of weight and keep it off, which I've done for a long time now.
Gary,
Nice.
Thank you so much as always for hopping on with us on Wednesdays and giving us a fountain of knowledge in the sport of wrestling. We appreciate it so much, and we can't wait to have you back on next week for another great episode of Wrestling Wednesdays. This is episode 6 already, and we're gearing up for 7 next week.
This was a blast, guys. Thank you so much for having Mason on and asking great questions. You guys do an amazing job, and I just hope everybody out there in the wrestling world is taking advantage of watching this every Wednesday, because we don't get enough coverage. And Anthony and Scotty, you guys do great jobs. I love your questions, and I'll do this as long as you want to have me.
All right, Gary. Thank you so much again. We'll see you next